Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
Bang a gong, we are on. It's Those Were the Days. 9 months ago, fantasy became reality in a form never before seen. Those Were the Days, a podcast dedicated to classic television. The motivation for spending an immense fortune to create the podcast stadium was to revisit the television of our youth, and even shows from before our time. To realize this dream, we needed to join together 4 of the world's best podcasters, to be named Iron Hosts, invincible people of auditory skill and precision. I am this week's chairman, TV's Travis, but I am not alone. With me, I have Iron Host Animation, Audie Norman.
Okay, so we're dubbing over these guys? Okay, so for this guy, I'm gonna use this kind of accent. And for this other guy, I'll just talk like this. And for the lady, we'll just do this, and it'll be fine, right? That'll work? Cool.
Iron Host Golden Girls, Amy Frost.
Listen, Hiroyuki Sakai, you had a great match tonight, and I'm gonna let you finish, but Masaharu Morimoto is the greatest Iron Chef that ever lived.
And Iron Host Old People Doing Old Things TV shows, Stephen Adams.
The podcast is strong, has a good, strong flavor, but I'm finding that some things are missing. I don't know what they are because I'm not a food critic, but get it together next time, Iron Chef.
Ale podcasters. Here we go. We are talking this week about Iron Chef. This month's topic is classic cooking shows.
I want to apologize to everyone in advance for me this month because I am going to be insufferable.
It's fine because I won't have that much to say, so you can take all my time.
So Amy has been trying to get this as our topic for at least the last 3 polls, and yeah. I think she stuffed the ballot box, which is fine. That's fine. You know what? All's fair, and those were the days.
Yeah.
But we are doing
how many Twitter accounts to do it?
Exactly. How many burner accounts did you need?
A lot.
So when cooking shows won, I immediately thought, okay, what can I do? And I went to a few ideas. Iron Chef was the one that I ultimately settled on because it fits our criteria. It began in October of 1993, ran for 7 seasons, ended 99-2000. But it was one of the earlier. It wasn't one of the earliest cooking shows I watched, but it was one of the earliest cooking shows that captured my attention and made me like really pay attention to something outside of just one person looking at a camera making something in a kitchen. And it showed me that cooking shows could be more than that. I loved watching The Frugal Gourmet and Yan Can Cook and Julia Child, The Galloping Gourmet, all of those. I'd watch them all. I enjoyed them. But there was something about Iron Chef that was different. Part of it was the camp factor with the dubbing. Just the show itself. And I'm going to dive into a little bit of that. But first, I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that, Stephen, you have not watched any Iron Chef.
Not
before.
a single episode, Travis.
That doesn't surprise me. But were you aware? Were you familiar with like Iron Chef as a concept?
Yes, I was completely aware of this because I had a friend of mine who loved it, and he would occasionally just shout Iron Chef words at me. I had no context for it, but he's like, "You don't watch Iron Chef?" And every now and then he would just go, Iron Chef, and just, yell at me, whatever they yell. I don't know, what, Aye Cuisine? What do they yell?
Ale Cuisine.
Ale Cuisine, yeah, that's what he would yell at me. Just walking down the hallway at school. I don't, still good friends with him to this day. But yeah, that's my only exposure to this show. I had no idea that it was basically the WWF in the cooking ring.
Yes. So, okay, and I'm going to also go on a limb and say that, Audie, you had no previous experience with Iron Chef.
Never watched it before in my life. I did know about it mainly because, we got into cooking shows around we really got into Alton Brown, me and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
when he became big. And then when he started doing the, modern American version, I knew about it, what it was, but I had never watched it, even the modern one before. So this was
Okay.
definitely an experience.
Excellent. And we're going to talk about Iron Chef America as well. But Amy, you're like me. You've watched some Iron Chef.
Yeah, this was
When
big. This was like college for me, is like what I
Mhm.
can think of, right? Because it was like back in the day when we were at the mercy of whatever was on TV, right? Like this
Yes.
was one of those things that they would put on at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Which let me
Mhm.
tell you, if you think this show is wild now, you watch the show at 2 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah.
it gets real strange.
I would
Um,
not.
I was huge into this. And to the point where my college boyfriend and I and his whole family had an Iron Chef day at his house, and it was Battle Apples, and it was like me and him and his two younger siblings, and we did a whole Iron Chef thing.
It's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, it was wild. I freaking love Iron Chef. The other thing about it is that, like, nowadays, right, cooking competition shows are everywhere, right? There's a million of them. I want to say that this has got to be, if not the first, it is one of the first cooking competition shows.
Absolutely. This was, I don't remember any cooking competition shows prior to kind of 2000. And it was the same sort of thing with me. It was kind of college, just after college, when I really got into this because it was running on Food Network. Food Network picked it up. So it was originally is a Japanese television show, and then it got broadcast in the U.S. And initially, it was being broadcast subtitled, and then shortly after that, Fuji TV was like, "Well, this is meant for sort of the broader Japanese audience, and it shouldn't be subtitled." So they just took the subtitles off of it. And so for a little while, on some of the local affiliates, you would see just the Japanese version of the show.
Ballsy.
And
Yeah.
but then Food Network and Food Network Canada picked up and did a dub for it, which is what you can see now. And it just
Mhm.
exploded. It exploded in popularity. And it was being shown all over the world. And it ended up spawning several spin-offs. There was Iron Chef USA, which was less than one season. It was only a couple of episodes. It wasn't very good because it didn't focus on the food. And then that failed. Then Food Network, couple of years later, did Iron Chef America, which ran for 13 seasons. And there's been Iron Chef iterations in countries all over the world. I chose an episode. Choosing an episode of this show was kind of, I basically just blindfolded myself, threw a dart at the wall, and said, "That one, that'll work." What's available for streaming is kind of all over the place because it doesn't make any sense what order they're putting stuff in because it's not in anywhere close. This episode on the streaming services was season 7, episode 11. It was originally from season 4.
Yeah.
Like episode 8 or something like that. For whatever reason, they're just all over the place. I have no idea why. I tried to look it up and nothing made any sense. But I did also choose this for the Iron Chef that's in it, Iron Chef Sakai. Because now I'm with Amy, Masaharu Morimoto, my favorite of the Iron Chefs. And he actually, so there were a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 Iron Chefs that did the Japanese version of the show. There was, and the Iron Chefs were broken up by their cuisine style.
Yeah.
So for the entire run of the series, they had Iron Chef Chen Kenichi was the Chinese Iron Chef, and he was there all the way along. They started off with Chef Inishibe, or Ishinibe, sorry, as the French Iron Chef. He retired about a year into it, and that's when Hiroyuki Sakai came along.
I do love
That
him.
guy
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. He is a fantastic, like he's got a fun personality to him for being, he's a little stodgy, which works.
But
And
he's
he's
like,
also,
I mean, for a French trained chef, that's exactly what you want. Like this
yes,
episode, he's like, leeks are a garnish. What are we doing?
Right.
Which is
he
just
also,
brilliant. His win rate is like, if you eliminate the people that were only there for like a few shows, like he's got a very good win rate.
Oh, he won like 80%
Nice.
of his battles.
Okay.
Like he didn't lose. And he's also done one of the most impressive things with a knife I have ever seen, which is peeling an apple. But he's holding the apple in his hand and he's using a chef's knife like a paring knife.
Mm-hmm.
And just he's spinning the apple and just taking skin off of it. And I'm watching that and I'm thinking, I cut myself looking at this video. Like my thumb is split open and he's just like going to town. It's an amazing thing. I'll have to find the clip and send it to you guys to
I'm
to
not
show
allowed
you
to
because
use knives in my house. I have to have
Oh.
permission first.
Just makes me think of an artist that can paint in any way, shape, or form with whatever brush you give them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I loved about Iron Chef was it was competition, but it was just as much chef versus the ingredients as it was chef versus chef.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Iron Chef is structured is they get a theme ingredient and then all of their dishes have to incorporate that ingredient in one way or another.
They have to highlight
And
that
Mhm.
ingredient.
yes,
It has
because
to
a
be the
lot of
feature.
people fall down on that.
Mm-hmm.
that is a very good distinction. It has to highlight and like elevate the ingredient. It has to be front and center. You can't just make something and throw leeks into it and be like, that's fine. And I loved that because the chefs have to get creative and have to really think about what they're doing. Now they do have a touch of kind of, they know a little bit ahead of time. They're given a list of, I think it's like 5 potential secret ingredients, just so they can give a shopping list and be like, here's what I would need if it was this or this.
Mm-hmm.
But once that's revealed, they get like 15 minutes to figure out what they're going to make, and then they start the hour. And they have 1 hour to make as many in this version, 1 hour to make as many dishes as they can, and then it's
I
judged.
think it's a minimum of 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it started off without a minimum, and then
Yeah.
they ended up with a minimum of 3. But there was, I think it was I read Battle Umeboshi, which I want to watch that episode because umeboshi are these like super super sour plums. But Battle Umeboshi, the challenger made like 8 dishes, which boggles the mind to think that somebody would do that many dishes on something like that. Like umeboshi is one of those things you see people do internet challenges on, like trying to eat them because they're that sour.
Just doing 8 dishes within 1 hour altogether. Good God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they get to bring their sous chefs in, and it's a battle, and whoever wins gets that honor. And the show was built around this kayfabe of the chairman. So the chairman Kaga he's not like he's a real person, but it's a character that he's playing that's running this culinary like gourmet academy.
It's the
Basically.
WWE.
Mhm.
Like it's
so
literally
good.
the
It really is.
WWE in Japan
It
with
is-
food.
It is every school anime that has ever
Yes.
existed.
Yes.
Which is what I love. That's what I love about the voice acting. They dubbed it like an anime.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They absolutely did.
Whoever decided to do that back in the like 99 2000 and bring this to a US audience was brilliant.
Well, so I mean, Japanese, especially Japanese competition shows, tend to be that way anyway. Another show that was ruined by American television was Ninja Warrior.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen
Mhm.
the original Ninja Warrior, like that's just a straight up anime and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought it here and they were like, what if everything was very intense and Monster Energy drink? And
What if it was
it's
American
not as good.
Gladiators but for a new audience?
Yeah, that was not
Pretty much.
great.
Yeah.
What if it was American Gladiators, but the participants are athletic?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you go back and watch American Gladiators,
Oh,
the contestants are not athletic at all, and that's why they fail. Like that show got destroyed because they had one guy on who had some athletic background, and he just decimated the show. And they're like, "Well, I guess we're done with this now."
You remember when Carl Winslow and Steve Urkel went on American Gladiators?
Yes.
I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
Gonna need to revisit that, I think.
Mhm.
Yes, that's that'll be during crossover. month.
Crossovers, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was very much WWE, that type of storytelling. I mean, even here, this episode was also fun, and I didn't realize it when I chose it. I literally chose it for Chef Sakai, and I thought leeks would be an interesting one because it's not a main ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
It's not choosing because a lot of the ingredients they would choose would be these really expensive exotic fish and meats and things that you can't get normally. And
Abalone
it was one of the reasons.
scarred me. You don't want to see an abalone
No,
ever.
not even in its
Don't.
natural habitat.
Definitely not. It's not okay.
They're wrong.
And it was one of the reasons why the show had such a high budget. Like for a cooking show, I think they said over the 7 seasons, it was something like US $7 million to produce this show
I believe it.
Mhm.
in the 90s because of the food budget and
Mhm.
because of the costuming for Chairman Kaga, because he had just outlandish
Good
costumes.
Lord, yeah.
I love him
Yes.
so much.
Oh, he's great. And so they would do the show, and the show ended up spawning. So Iron Chef America, what I liked about that was they very much kept the same idea behind it.
Yeah.
And where the Iron Chefs are these culinary giants, and they are. They were good
Mhm.
celebrity chefs. They started off with Bobby Flay, Mario Batali, Wolfgang Puck. They ended up getting some more over the years, but they kept that kind of kayfabe going on, where Mark Dacascos plays a character of the chairman who is supposed to
Yeah,
be
he
the
does.
nephew. He's
Yeah.
the nephew of Chairman Kaga.
That I knew.
And then
good
I like
Lord.
that. I forget who it is in Iron Chef America, but the floor guy,
Uh-huh.
he does have Ota energy.
Oh yes,
Like it's just exactly the same.
it was in Iron Chef America. It was Kevin Braun,
That's it.
Alton Brown's favorite Canadian, Kevin Braun.
Nice.
Also, so Ota, who's the floor reporter in this. So the show had two
gosh.
announcers. They had an
The
announcer and
play-by-play
then a
and the
color
color
commentator.
guy.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Jerry the King Lawyer
And-
and who?
Yeah, exactly. But it was where are they? Kenji Fukui was the announcer, and then Yukio Hattori was the color commentator, and they would have a couple of the judges would also commentate,
Mhm.
and then you had your floor guy, Ota. And what I loved about Ota was it would just be this stream of consciousness from Fukui,
Yep.
and then Ota would always interrupt very politely with Fukui-san.
Mhm.
And he would wait until he was acknowledged, and then he would tell what was going on from the floor. And it's so good. It gets to the point where I hear Fukui-san all the time in my head.
It's funny because we mentioned it being like sounding like an anime dub, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, are they making fun of this, or is this like being natural to how they actually did it? You know, and like, holy crap, this is hilarious.
I wondered
Yeah,
that
it's
myself.
really kind of both.
Yeah.
It
I mean, if
it's
you
kind
listen
of
to the
both.
chairman, who is not
Oh,
dubbed for very important reasons,
Right.
you can tell like this is take over the top and then add 35% on top of
Right.
that.
Yeah, they were really, really going for it. And it's a ton of fun. And what I loved was this was the birth of kind of cooking competitions on TV, which for good or bad, right? Like Iron Chef America, I feel like was a good extension of this because they
Sure.
tried to keep the same energy of it. And it was focused on the food. And that was a big thing with Iron Chef. You watch this show and everything is about the food that these two chefs are creating.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get the framing element
Mm-hmm.
with the
Which
chairman.
I had forgotten this episode was during where the original Iron Chef Japanese retired,
Yeah.
and they were looking for the new one. They hadn't named one yet. So they had the whole thing with like the Katagawa clan was kind of trying to move in, and that's where he was sending in his hitman, right? He was sending
so
in
good.
a chef to take down one of the other Iron Chefs. And I loved like that kind of thing is what made that's what took this show over the top. Like it was
Mhm.
already it was a 10 out of 10, and then adding in that element just pushed it to an 11. It's so much fun that way.
And it's impressive
And-
that they started with this, like setting the bar this freaking high for any other show to come after it.
Yep.
Was one, just setting up for the cooking and having all that ready,
Yeah.
having the cameras ready to film everything and not get in the way. And then you add the storylines and over the topness of it, like, good Lord.
And those cameramen totally get in the way, and it doesn't
Absolutely.
Oh,
all of the
it's
time.
Oh, yeah.
it's the early '90s. Those cameras are not small. It's not like they're running around with red
No.
DSLRs and wireless
No.
junk. There's cables.
Well, you see the
There's
one guy holding his
cable
camera.
dude, you know?
Yeah. You see a
Mhm.
guy holding the camera, a guy holding the cables trying to coil them around.
If you trip in a kitchen there's a high likelihood you're going to have a real bad time.
Yeah.
So, like, that cable management needed to be on the money.
On top of, you've got these high-strung restaurant chefs that are running around that aren't used to that. So you know you do not want to get in their way. Like, you don't want to get in the way of Chef Sakai, because it will be over for you.
He's got that knife he had, like you said. He knows how to use that.
Yes, he does.
He's like, I'm going to trim off just the top layer of skin from your face, and I can do it.
Oh, whatever. It'll be full fried green tomatoes with somebody eating a barbecue.
Tawanda.
By the way,
yeah, it's bad news.
Did anyone see the guy reach into the pot of boiling water during this episode?
I missed that.
It's very early on, but he's got the green onions, the leeks, and he's just putting the green part in the boiling water to blanch them before putting it. And one dropped, and he just kind of reaches in and pulls it out of the boiling water.
Yeah.
I'm like, that chef does have his asbestos hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I could do that.
Look, it's Leidenfrost effect. He's probably fine. You got to go fast.
It's true. If you grab it quick enough, it can't hurt you, right?
Yeah. Real
Plus, a competition like this, the adrenaline's going. You're not feeling anything.
No.
Yeah. Although I will say, they made a comment during this one that Chef Junichi Tateyama was sweating really bad, the challenger. I'm like, yeah, no, he's not sweating that bad. I would have been sweating like that before we started cooking.
Oh yeah. You walk out. Can I please have another white shirt? Thank you.
I would need to change my shirt halfway through, and I would need a dedicated sous chef just with a towel to dab me off the entire time.
Yeah, this is stuff of nightmares for me. The idea of getting a ingredient and having to cook anything that quickly, like, no, I don't think so.
You mean you couldn't come up with 5 dishes?
No, I couldn't come up with one dish. I was telling Stephanie, we were watching it together, and she was like, well, they know what they're doing. I was like, I would love to be as confident as these men seem to be, like, doing anything, even the stuff I'm good at, quote unquote. I'm like, I'm not getting on TV and trying to show people how to do it. Forget that.
And
Crazy.
you know, the funny thing too, this is like, all of this is high cuisine too. Like, it's haute cuisine stuff.
Yeah,
this is not home style cooking at all. This is like Michelin starred restaurant style cooking, and they're doing 4, 5, 6 dishes like that in an hour. It's just insane, but it's so fun. And really, honestly, without Iron Chef, I don't think we have things like the Great British Bake Off.
No.
Top Chef. You know,
What's the
Gordon
one,
Ramsay doesn't have a career without
Chopped.
Iron Chef having come along.
Yeah,
Chopped is another one.
Absolutely doesn't exist.
And some of the shows would get things right, and some of them would lose a little. Like Chopped, my only real complaint that I ever had with Chopped was that there would sometimes be extra tension between competitors and judges.
And then it would always be like, so I lost my house, and my dog got hit by a car, and my mom's in jail, and my toddler is also in jail. And if I could just get this money, I could turn everything around.
This is the problem though with American shows. Because this show, like you said 3 times, Travis, the show is about the food. But the minute we import anything, the minute we import anything, it's all of a sudden, well, that competitor's trying to eat that competitor's lunch, and they're on a trip each other, and there's like, my grandma died yesterday, and all this, like, I hate American reality TV. It's just, it's upsetting, because the talent on display alone is worth the watch. And that goes for a lot of different shows. I'm thinking about that show where they make knives, and now they've got like a moonshiner show. And like the talent in what they do is cool enough, but they're always like, I'm going to beat that guy with a stick, show him what's what when I go out on that arena or whatever. Like, calm down.
That's what I've said, right? Like the best of the competition shows are where it's the competitors versus the challenge.
Right.
Right. Because that's what Great British Baking
Right.
Show is, right? The pottery throwdown, which is also British, is basically the same thing. Blown Away, which is the glass blowing show, season 1 was very drama heavy. But they've sort of moved away from that in later seasons. They did a good job. They did figure that out. But that's what it always is, right? Is you want to see people doing cool things.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
like, great. So we're gonna and giving like dangling a prize in front of them in order to get them to do said cool thing is fine. Like that's
Yeah,
fine.
sure. It's the sportsmanship I like, because like these
Yeah.
guys are going to make their food independently of whether one or the other. They're coming at it to see who wins, but it's not like I've got to beat you. It's just like I've got to make great dishes that end up
Yeah,
being
like
better than that guy's dishes.
the show Beat
Yeah.
Bobby Flay
Mhm.
for a very long time had it was never about beating Bobby Flay. It was always like showcasing these restaurants and this food. Like
Mhm.
that's what it was about. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it was just a framing element.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not very good.
It's a 30-minute ad.
Kinda.
A restaurant.
I mean, it was
yeah.
more than that. It was like a, hey, here's this food. Hey, here's how you make this food. And then
Mhm.
it was like, here's how this person makes their food.
Mhm.
And like it was good, but it was okay.
It was good, but it was basically the first half of it was diners, drive-ins, and dives, but with nicer restaurants,
Yeah.
like fancier restaurants. And
Yeah.
then the second half was attempting Iron Chef America, but only
Yeah.
Bobby Flay.
But only Bobby Flay.
And
Who I do like. I
I
Bobby
do.
Flay.
Although
Sure.
it's funny because you mentioned Masaharu Morimoto. So when they did the first Iron Chef America, it was a special, and that was the one that had Wolfgang Puck, and they had Chef Sakai and Morimoto basically going against the American chefs.
Mm.
Bobby Flay and Morimoto developed a rivalry because Flay beat him, but at the very end of the hour, he jumped up on his station, standing on his chopping board, like pumping his fist in the air, and that offended Morimoto because he didn't. It was like he would disregarded the cleanliness of his station at that point,
Yeah.
Mm.
and so there was a little beef between them for a bit.
My favorite
Sure.
thing about Morimoto was that he was young when
Mhm.
this show was out, and he was like the young gun, right? Like he was the loose cannon of
Yeah.
Japanese cuisine, right? Like he was pushing all the envelopes, and he would go up against these very traditional guys, and they would all be like, "Oh, he's so wild." And then fast forward to when he becomes an American Iron Chef, and he is like the epitome of traditionalism.
He's the
And
elder statesman and
yeah. Oh,
the
it's so
old
funny.
guard.
I love it. Ah,
But yeah, he's fantastic. He came along. He was actually the third Iron Chef Japanese.
yes.
He came towards the end of the run. But yeah, this was just. I mean, there's not a ton to say about it. Like, there's no plot to break down or anything like that. It's just, it was just Thunderdome WWE cage match, but with in a kitchen, and you cook your food and you go. But man, they would get some fun ingredients to play around with, and
Yeah.
you would see some food, like all of the food, is just amazing. And not only do they have to make that plate, they have to make six plates of food, because
Yeah.
they have to give one to each of the judges, they have to give one to the chairman, and then they have to have one to take photos with.
Yep.
So
Well, I gotta say too, the commentary along the entire competition just made it so much better worth watching, because you've got these people, some of them who know what they're talking about, and some are just like, I like food, and all talking about it. Like when they brought out that black chicken, and everybody was like, "What the heck is that?"
Why is that
Mhm.
black chicken?
You
Their
know?
feathers are black too, and they lay black eggs. It's wild.
those
Whoa.
chickens are
They're
crazy.
absolutely wild. They're so beautiful. It's
They
wild.
definitely, like, it totally looks like a cooked smoked chicken.
Yeah.
I
just
thought it
simmering,
was.
because
I thought it was like
Yeah,
pre-cooked chicken.
No,
Nope,
that's what they
it's
were
just a
talking
black
about.
chicken.
that is black meat, black straight to the bone.
Yep.
See,
They're
I
very
watch
pretty.
a show like this, and I discover there are things that exist that I was otherwise not
Well,
aware
so,
of.
and that's the wild thing about especially this one, right? Because like the American one, it's more focused for an American audience, right? And so like the Japanese one though, you're like, what is let me Google this real quick. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What is this
Yeah.
food? That everybody's like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, no, I love that. And you're like, what? Wait, hang
Right.
on. I
Well,
I
just the
didn't
fact
know.
that there's like 3 or 4 different kinds of leeks. I was like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah. I didn't know how to feel about scallops and eggs. I was willing to give it a shot, but I did not know about
He was
that one.
too,
I was
apparently.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
it
didn't
wasn't
go
what he
great.
intended, which
Right.
Stuck to the plate.
also
Mhm.
I mean, stuck to the pan.
actually, yeah, I'm actually kind of glad, like, in hindsight, the episode that I picked had a lot of different elements to it that I didn't know would be in there. Seeing one of the chefs have something fail on them,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you know,
And
because
even
that doesn't happen all the time. But
even
like
Chef Sakai decided to just not
not use one.
do one.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like, it's
Mhm.
not up to snuff, which is a thing that American cooking shows need to learn about. Right? Because how
Yes.
often is it like they'll put an element on the
Mhm.
plate and they're like, you should have just left that off.
Yeah.
You gotta
Yeah.
learn to edit.
Yeah.
And it's tough when you only have an hour to
Oh, yeah.
conceive. You have an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to conceive, prep, cook, and plate. Like the pressure of that, just I can't even imagine it. However, it is fun to recreate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note too for people who might listen to the show that haven't watched this yet, they do have a crew of sous chefs with them. So it's not like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
all by
Right.
themselves, which I think contributes to that. Like, I only have an hour to make 5 dishes. It's like, well, you have an hour to make 5 dishes, but you've also got like 2 to 4 other people with you helping you make those dishes, you know, and you're making I mean, you're a chef, so you got a crew.
And like everybody's got their thing, right? Like
Right.
they'll be I guess you start to learn the sous chefs that work with the Iron Chefs because it's always the same ones. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You'd be like, oh, well, this one's specialty is da 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 da.
Yeah.
And so you know that
Yep.
they're gonna handle that.
Yeah.
But you know, as a chef, you need to you gotta get in all the like you're not leaving any dish up to your sous chefs.
Exactly. You're
Right.
gonna approve everything before it goes out the door. I've played Overcooked, you know. I know
Yeah.
how this works.
I really enjoy like the different, you know, the clashes of styles, because it wouldn't always be a French chef going against Chef Sakai, right? You might get somebody who specialized in French cuisine going up against Chef Kenichi or whatever. But like this guy coming in was a Japanese French fusion
Yeah.
and bringing those different things, and then seeing them transform things, you know, something that you would not like. I would never think to very thinly slice leeks and then throw them in a deep fryer.
No.
That looks so good.
But
That
I
looks
wanted to just eat a
so
handful
good.
of those.
Well, because you
Like,
think about like the French's onions, right, in the
yeah,
can.
yeah,
Same
exactly.
idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just never would
A
have
couple
thought to do
Michelin
that.
stars up.
But it's just it's one of those things where it unlocks a lot of what you think about with food. And even if you're not somebody who's going to cook, the show has entertainment value to it. You can just sit back and watch and just marvel in what's going on and enjoy the commentary, and maybe learn something too. You might learn something new about some food that you wouldn't have thought of. Even if you never make it, you might think about it down the road and maybe try it at a restaurant or something. Who knows? So it's like, it's just, there's so many different things I think about a show like this that's really cool. And then to see that this is where things kind of got started with this craze of cooking competitions, and how many celebrity chefs basically owe their career to Iron Chef.
Yeah.
Not
There's a
just the ones that have
Futurama-
participated on it.
There's a Futurama episode about Iron Chef when
Oh,
Bender
yeah,
wants
yeah.
to become a cook.
Yes.
Says he's Iron Cook.
And I mean, it's been parodied to death. I remember Alton Brown doing an episode of Good Eats where they had the scrap Iron Chef, and it was
Yes.
he took the concept of
Nice.
Iron Chef and put it in a scrap, like a literal junkyard, where they were cooking with things that. So it was an episode where he made bacon, and so everything he used to make the bacon came from the junkyard. So he had like old lockers and ductwork and like all this kind of stuff, but it was all framed like an episode of Iron Chef just in the scrapyard.
Yeah.
I love things like that. But yeah, this
That
was
dude
a
knows how to
really
make
cool
food
show.
with whatever he can.
Yes. Yes, he does. And like I said, not only was it Iron Chef America, and then the spin-offs of that Gauntlet, there's a new version of it with Alton Brown that came out this past year called Quest for the Legend. But there was Iron Chef in Israel, in the UK, Australia, Vietnam, Thailand, like all over the place. Indonesia, Canada's got one coming, Brazil. So Iron Chef is still going strong 30 years after it started. It's still a very strong brand all over the place. And it's the theatrics of it. It had that great music always going, and just everything about it was super fun to me. So Steven, I want to ask you, now that you've seen it, and even though it wasn't something you'd ever watched before, do you think you would watch any more Iron Chef?
I really enjoyed this. This might be one of the only cooking shows that I could see myself watching repeatedly because of the theatrics and the production value. And it was just wild. I love the commentary. I love that they would be like, what is he doing with that? What's going on? What is that thing that he's using? And then somebody would chime in. I don't remember who it was, with like, oh, I've just got word that they're using blah, 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 to do, did, blah, blah. And I'm like, holy cow, there's a dude on the floor, like getting information and passing it back. It felt like a football game. You don't need to change anything about the show to make it appeal to an American audience. Like, forget it.
Nope.
And I love learning. I love watching people who are good at something do the thing that they're good at. I will watch anybody. I don't care if I'm making hamburgers, to be like, are you really good at making hamburgers? Well, I'm going to watch, because you might learn something, you know? I had an absolute blast. A++ would watch again. Fantastic.
Excellent. Audie, how about you? Would you watch any more Iron Chef? It's free. You can get it everywhere. So.
Oh, absolutely. This feels like something I'm going to be putting on while I'm doing drawing stuff. You know,
Excellent.
it's good something to have in the background that you don't have to necessarily pay that much attention to, especially because they're talking about everything so well and telling you what's going on. But yeah, this was a blast. This is so much fun to watch.
And what I like is it's available on like Freevee, Tubi, all these free ones, ad supported. You can just throw it on wherever. Amy, how about you? Are you going to be diving into some Iron Chef here?
I'm back in it. I hadn't watched in like a long time, honestly. And yeah, it was so good. I do want to bring up the chairman for like a hot second though.
Absolutely.
Because the chairman is not dubbed.
Right.
Which is weird.
No.
Right. Everybody else is dubbed. Okay, this is because he's like a hot shot Japanese actor. He played Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. He did both Jean Valjean and Javert in Les Mis. He was the Javert in the 10th anniversary concert edition for like he was the Japanese Javert. Like he's like a big deal. And so they did not dub him, which I think was the right choice. It's just so good. It's just wild,
funny.
right? You're just like, this man was Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar, and you go, yeah, no, I get that. Yes, I see.
I can see
that how that works.
Now, one thing I did notice watching it this time was I remember, and I found out this was the case. I remembered that even the stuff prior to him starting, like coming out into Kitchen Stadium, was also subtitled. It wasn't dubbed, like where he's sitting there contemplating.
Yeah.
And he's like, if memory serves, you know, that whole bit, that was all subtitled before. And somewhere along the line, they dubbed that part of it.
Yeah.
Which kind of bummed me out a little bit. But at the same time, like, it's just, I don't care. I just don't care. Just give me more of it. Just keep coming with it. And that's where, when Mark Dacascos would play the role in Iron Chef America, if you didn't watch the original Iron Chef, you're like, why is he hamming it up so much with his character? And then you realize, he's a lesser version of the Japanese chairman. Like he's toned down from what the Japanese chairman was, which is saying something. But like everything right down to the way Dacascos was just more physical with his chairman.
Yeah.
Which also makes sense.
Right.
And it's why now, if you ever, Stephen, if you ever watch an Iron Chef America or Audie, you'll see at the beginning of it, Mark Dacascos picks up and he's holding a yellow bell pepper.
Yep.
And then immediately drops it for an apple and takes a big bite out of the apple.
Good man.
I get it.
Because it's American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's fun stuff like that. But yeah, I'm all in too. This is going into my rotation of like, all right, I'm working. I'll just throw some Iron Chef on in the background, and you know, you'll hear Fukui-san about 1,000 times.
It's on the Roku channel too, at least some of it, which is nice because then I can just put it on the Roku.
And I think there's a brand new version of Iron Chef that's out now. Because we turned it on earlier. I don't remember who the chairman is in this one. But it was pretty cool and it was up to date. Same concept. Go in, get your stuff, come back, make a thing. It was pretty awesome. So if you're looking for more Iron Chef, there's apparently 47 versions you can get
all over the globe. And they did 295 episodes of this show in 7 years.
Whoa.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Plus then they did some like extras after the run of it had ended, prior to any of the US stuff. So there was a total of like 309 episodes made of the show over the course of 7.5 years, which is just crazy.
It would hurt my feelings so bad the day you had to take down Kitchen Stadium. Like, I don't even know if I could do it. I'd be
Mhm.
like, no, this is going to be found by people thousands of years from now. And they're going to be like, what was this?
Some sort
It'll
of
be like the
gladiatorial
Colosseum.
arena.
Gladiatorial combat. What is going on?
Oh, so good. But yep, that's Iron Chef. It's a super fun show. If you haven't seen it before, do yourself a favor and watch it. It's way too much fun. Even if you're not into cooking shows, it's a ton of fun.
It is great. I'm not into cooking shows. It was a blast. There, you heard it
Same.
here.
There you go. See, 4 out of 4 loved it, and that says something. When you're definitely yeah. I was not surprised when you hadn't seen it, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Now, we're not done with cooking shows by a long shot. We got 3 more to go over. And Audie, next week you're bringing us a fun one, aren't you?
Yes. So, as I've said, was not into cooking. Like, I have not been into cooking things much until the last few years when I've actually had to do most of the cooking in the house. Um, you know, sorry, that's the way it goes. But
Sure.
so I've gotten into, all the YouTube cooking things, people teaching stuff. So this was a struggle for me to try and find something that I had any connection with or knew anything about, and two, that had any availability online. But I found one that I definitely remember mostly by name, and that is Yan Can Cook.
Ah, yes.
So can you. Talk
Yeah.
about
So-
knife skills.
Yeah. So, little background on this real quick is I was 50-50 on doing Iron Chef or Yan Can Cook. I almost went with, I watched a few episodes of Martin Yan because that was one of the shows that I remember from being a kid watching and falling in love with cooking because of Martin Yan. And so I'm totally looking forward to this. I'm so glad that you chose this. I cannot
Yep.
wait.
And I found it on YouTube. The original TV producers, KQED, put a bunch of them, just slapped them up on the YouTubes and a bunch of their other shows and stuff. So there's not a specific episode number. With what I'm choosing, I'm doing the episode Recreate Chinese Restaurant Favorites at Home.
Ooh. I might have to
So-
do this one early so I can get some cooking in.
I was going to say, I might be trying this at home that night
All
before
right.
we
Absolutely.
record. We'll see. But yeah, this should be fun.
Oh, I can't wait. This is going to be great. This is going to be a fun month overall. I think Amy and I are probably a little bit more excited about it than anyone else, but I cannot wait, Stephen, for you to watch Martin Yan.
I'm looking
I
forward
just
to
can't
it.
wait.
Love Yan.
So that's going to be next week. Now, we didn't get any feedback this week, but we've been off for a couple of weeks.
Sure.
The holidays hit, all that good stuff. But if you want to send us feedback, you can. You can hit us up on Twitter at Those Days Show, or thosewere-the-days-show@gmail.com. Absolutely. Do you have a favorite cooking show from before the year 2000? Was there one that you really, really connected to? Did you watch a lot of Julia Child? PBS ran a lot of cooking shows. I remember that. So if you've got one, let us know. We want to hear from you about that. Thosewere-the-days-show@gmail.com or twitter.com/those-days-show. And until next week, and Martin Yan's Yan Can Cook, whose cuisine will reign supreme? Well, we'll find out. But this has been Those Were the Days.
We did it.
We did it.
We did it.
Insufferable.